Welcome back to Building Research Resilience. Whoops, not resilience. Building Research Relevance. I should know what the name of my own talk is. My name is Stephen Shaw from McGill University, and welcome back to the second issue of Building Research Resilience. And I want to explore a simple question, whether researchers and clinicians are professionals or technicians. And this is kind of a tough one. And I go back to mentorship and who your mentors are. And I've been blessed with a lot of them. And one time I was asked, who's the smartest person you've ever worked with? And that was really a good one, but it's really not that hard for me. There is one person. It's not many of my mentors, supervisors, colleagues, collaborators, but it's really a simple question for me. It's Rafael Marin. And Rafa, I met quite a long time ago, and he told me he had many words of wisdom, but he told me to read everything: novels, classics, philosophy, drama, math, science, pop psychology, cheap stuff, bad stuff, poetry, whatever. He would always lend me books and then grill me about the books he read, or books I read, and he would grill me in great detail without notes. He introduced me to things like Baldwin and Emerson. He loved the speeches of Frederick Douglass and work by Jonathan Swift, Mark Twain, even Kerouac and Chekhov and Maya Angelou. Mary Shelley was one of his favorites, and it's also one of mine too. But he said you always have to develop questions for the author as you read a book or read a project, and see if the author answers them along the way. And that way you enjoy the journey, you challenge, you engage, you're a true intellectual, really a professional in how you manage work. He said no matter how specialized the work is, whether it's a newspaper article, a scholarly paper, or a novel, ask questions of your author along the way. This way, when you do this and you read widely, you'll be better and more creative within your field. The wider you read and learn, the more creative you'll be. He said also that'll make you more professional too. He actually told me, he said that there's very few people who are professionals and intellectuals. Even jobs we think of as high status, professional, intellectual jobs are almost entirely made up by technicians. Folks who simply paint by numbers, follow the words of what they read. They don't engage, they don't create, they don't develop. They're not true artists, not true intellectuals, not true professionals. And really, there's no problem. And Rafa would always say that that's not a problem, that we need some paint-by-numbers technicians, that they're very important, they're very good. They tend to be efficient, high-quality people, but they're not moving a field ahead. They're not creating. They never make much of a difference. They simply sustain what we have in terms of knowledge and application of knowledge. But in academia, a word apparently I can't pronounce, you need intellectuals and creatives who have technical skills to move ahead. And this is the same for researchers and for clinicians. And that's really how you want to aim things, so you're making a difference. And Rafa knew that path. I met him in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida in 1983, so it was quite a long time ago. He was much, much older than me and the rest of the staff. I was working lawn maintenance for a couple of summers in South Florida. I was planting trees around new subdivisions and also maintaining things like sprinklers and whatnot. And Rafa was really the best at the tree trimming, the edging, the architecture of some of the plants around the area, and replanting palm trees. He was really good about it. And we would read on lunch breaks. And he would often actually teach some of the other co-workers how to read, because some of them were non-readers or non-readers in English. And he would help them develop reading skills. But he would always say, he had many words of wisdoms that I still use, which is, are you doing this the easiest way or the best way? Because those two things are not always the same. He would say any job is art if you do your work with the intent to make an impression. He said, make a difference, or what are you even doing here? And then he always would say, what do you mean that you're hot and tired, college boy? You are blessed to work. Act like you are blessed. And Rafa was talking about landscaping and about management, but really he was teaching about life. And this wasn't a misplaced professor. He was a landscaper. But honestly, he was one of the smartest and best mentors I knew, a true intellectual. And I think I've met just as many true intellectuals in landscaping as I have as a professor. Because what we have is we have a lot of people who know how to do things. This is true in hospitals, where psychological services are delivered or where research is done. We know how to do things, but we rarely know why. The routine and the mundane have taken over. Automatization has taken over a lot of what we do. And efficiency is really the primary value that we hold when we do research in psychology and education or practice as a teacher or as a psychologist. And the incentives are always for more, not for better. If you work as a school psychologist in schools, there may be assessment quotas in your school board. If you work in a hospital or private practice, there may be billable hours that you're supposed to hit, targets that you're supposed to hit in order to make your budget. For academics, the dollar amount of grants you've won, the number of publications, your H-index, are all incentivized to achieve, and they all are about numbers. Do more, not do better. I hear a lot of people talking about, is artificial intelligence going to replace people who are creative workers? Well, I think it'll replace a lot of technicians because they do routine, technically fine, rote, derivative, and mostly not relevant research. As clinicians, they're not really scientist practitioners. They're bureaucrat practitioners. They're making sure that you do things that don't get your school board or school district sued or a grievance. We're just following the rules. Is that fine? Mostly it is. But often a lack of imagination and a lack of courage is the real problems. The result is that fields like psychology and education are really stuck. They're rarely dynamic. School psychology is one of the strange areas of psychology because you can be a school psychologist without a doctorate degree. It's one of the only exceptions to psychology entry level as a doctorate degree. School psychologists, the majority of practitioners in the United States and Canada, have a master's plus 30 or a specialist degree or a certificate of advanced graduate studies. All of these degrees that are pretty much a 3-year master's program. And truthfully, that's fine. You can teach anyone to administer or score a whisk. It's not that hard. Anybody can follow a manualized CBT approach or therapy protocol. Again, not that hard. Or you can even write a paper based on a survey or some other vague methodology. These are not difficult. And what we're doing, the incentives right now, are to simply be an efficient technician. And I think the efficient technicians will be replaced with AI. But that's not really who we want to be if we're going to produce and build a relevant research systems. What we're really trying to do is build capacity to improve knowledge, to create social justice priorities, to change systems in order to support colleagues and students, to provide innovations in how we work with children and adults in education and mental health. Very few of these questions and big issues and topics can be addressed with a more efficient way to do things. We require that relevant research foundation. I'd like to see us have more intellectualism, usefulness, creativity, and contextual application. Truthfully, I know very few academics who read novels or go to the theater or are knowledgeable about music. It's always exciting to meet those sort of people because those are the folks who tend to have this wide knowledge base that can help them really be a creative contributor to research, science, and other issues because they have this breadth of knowledge. And to say that because I'm a lot of the best work I've done is actually taking research from other fields like management, biology, and applying some of those methodologies really to psychology. And that's just the fact that I read widely has helped me to take some of those ideas and apply it to psychology. And this is the thing that we tend not to do. We teach students how to answer research questions. They take methodology and research classes. They know how to answer questions. They don't know how to ask questions. And this is the big issue. You need to ask better questions. And this is the key, and this is why clinical experience is good for researchers, why wide-ranging experience and being a true intellectual helps you understand the problem you're trying to solve. Knowing how to do things is great, but knowing why you're doing them and what you're trying to answer really needs to be your driving purpose. I mean, when I used to consult with doctoral students they needed a stats consultant, so that was often me. And I'll say, well, just run the data, which is something I have no earthly clue what they're talking about. Can you just administer a whole bunch of t-tests or just run the data and see what we get out of it? That's not research, and that's not relevant at all. But that's the way a lot of things are right now in terms of the work. We also have people who are experts in certain methodologies, which is fine. I have people who are very excited that they want to do a qualitative study or they want to do a confirmatory factor analysis. Okay, that's fine. Those are perfectly fine methods to do. Same with clinicians. I want to do CBT. But this is an ask backwards type of way to approach a problem. The issue is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And then what are the tools necessary to solve that problem? You have to have this wide base of knowledge so you can really answer that or ask that question in such a way that you'll know this is the type of question that requires a confirmatory factor analysis, or this is the type of question that requires a very strong phenomenological qualitative approach to a problem, or this is the type of case that requires CBT, or this is a type of case that requires a different type of methodology for clinical work. So professionals ask the best and most relevant questions because they have the most breadth of knowledge, the most understanding of the context in which they work. This helps us answer the questions better, whether it's a research question or a clinical question. The most relevant, you need to be better at asking questions is kind of the point here. Technicians really have good answers to the exact same question over and over and over again. This is what leads us to a stale, stagnant profession with no relevance. And also, as clinicians, not an individualized approach. This is really a problem. So I think Rafa would be pretty upset with the idea that researchers right now simply do the same thing over and over and over again. He would have a hard time believing that this is what professors do with research. All of the formal education and well-known academics are simply really right now technicians. If we're going to be professionals, I think we have to take Rafa's perspective. Read widely, understand the context in which you're doing, take the time to listen to the person or problem right in front of you, and help to ask the best possible questions. Because right now, the best part is, I remember Rafa was a very good landscaper because he knew how to ask the right questions. He knew how to answer and figure out the problem, and then we would figure out the techniques necessary to answer those questions and address those problems. As researchers, this is something we need to do. As clinicians, this is what you need to do. This is why you're a professional. Simply being a technician is not enough to make things happen. So that's it for today. So next time we'll talk about the importance of theory and models, which kind of comes right out of Rafa's idea, but why theories and models are critical for any clinical work and any research work. So until next time, this is Stephen Shaw from McGill University, and thanks for joining me with Building Research Relevance. Bye-bye.